Hello, welcome back to Learn Oikonomia. In this video, we are going to look at the relationship of externalities with public good. As we have already seen, an externality exists if some of the variables which affect one decision maker's utility or profit are under the control of another decision maker. That means that uh, the utility of an economic entity depends upon the decision making capacity or the decision making uh, act taken by another economic entity. If you take the example of a chemical work, you can see that the chemical works which pumps effluent into a stream, which affect the cost of producing beer in the brewery industry downstream, because it shows of output level and input combinations and the amount of effluent which needs to be removed from the water before it could be used for beer production. In this case, you could see that the externality is detrimental. But in other cases, there are many beneficial externalities. For example, you could see that when an apple grower is located next to a beekeeper, in this case, you could see that the bees will cross-pollinate the apple trees, which would benefit the apple grower because it would feed off the apple blossom, benefiting the beekeeper as well. Okay. So you could see that this is a kind of externality which would benefit both the apple grower as well as the beekeeper. In this example of reciprocal externality, you are able to see that both the parties would be benefiting, right? Both the apple grower as well as the beekeeper are benefiting. In addition, there can be consumer externalities, producer consumer externalities, consumer producer externalities. So in the real life, you could see multiple varieties of externalities. So let's see why externalities may lead to inefficiency. We have to consider again the example of an upstream chemical factory and also the downstream brewery. Okay. In this case, the chemical factory would fix its output level to maximize its profit, because we know that producers are always expected to make more profits. Their main intention is to make profit. So these people are motivated by profit. They will try all their means to increase their profit. So they will not take into consideration the effect of its pollution on profits of the brewery industry. They are just concerned about their own profit motive. They are not concerned about their neighboring industries or how the other people are suffering. Actually, the social cost is not taken into consideration. Only the private motive of profit making is taken into consideration by these kinds of factories or industries, whomever may be the producers. As in the case of consumers who are very much interested to increase their utility out of the consumption of a commodity, the producer of a particular commodity is intended to increase their profit and not concerned about the social cost. In this case, you could see that the brewery would be willing to pay the chemical factory in order to reduce the amount of effluent. This is so because this would reduce the cost of the brewery industry. Such a kind of reduction in the effluent may reduce the chemical industry's profit. As the firm's output of chemicals and effluents are in fixed proportions, and the reduction of the effluent requires a reduction in the output of the chemical industry. If the reduction in the brewery industry's cost, if it exceeds the reduction in the chemical factory's profit, there are potential gains from trade, and the original level of effluent cannot be efficient. This observation leads to a possible solution to externality problem, which is presented by Coase. We have already explained the famous Coase Theorem, which would deal with all these kinds of issues. So it actually offers a kind of solution to all these kinds of issues. It explains how this property rights could be used, or how this property rights could be allocated, etc. So what is the importance of property rights, the initial allocation of property rights and all. If you haven't watched that video, I request you to go and watch that video, because that will give you a better understanding. So in this video also, we are giving a gist of Coase Theorem. In this case, you could taking the chemical factory into consideration and also the brewery into consideration, you could see that you have to assume that first of all, the chemical factory produces its output and effluent in a fixed proportion. So we can write its profit as a function of effluent, and that is X is Ix as B of X or Bx, right? The damage produced by a chemical factory downstream due to the pollution caused by the this chemical factory and which is affected by this brewery downstream, you could see that it's D of X or Dx. If you look at the figure, you could see that the marginal benefit curve and the marginal damage from polluting the downstream. You can assume that the profit of the two firms measure the social value of their outputs and that the effluent does not impose cost on other individuals or firm. Then the efficient level of pollution which would maximize the profit of the two industries or the two firms that is given by X star, and this satisfies that P dash X star minus D dash X star is equal to 0. It can consider two possible legal situations which could be determined by the firm setup. Okay, first of all, this could be permissive. In this situation, you can suppose that the chemical firm has a legal right to discharge as much as effluent as it wishes. So there is no control of the effluent; it could discharge whatever it wishes, and this would choose a level where B dash of X is equal to 0, and here the level of pollution is considered to be inefficiently large as it would affect the brewery firm, right? And consider the second case which would be considered as restrictive. Here the chemical firm has no legal right to discharge the effluent and the brewery firm can obtain a court order to prevent it from doing so. So it is putting some kind of restriction on the chemical discharging firm so that the chemical discharging firm has no right to discharge any kind of effluent into the river or a stream. In such a situation, it is a brewery firm which controls the level of pollution and chooses a level that is x2 minus 0, which is considered to be beneficial for the brewery. So its costs from the effluent here are minimized. A 0 level of pollution is also inefficient here since the brewery firm ignores the effect of its choice and profit of the chemical firm. Since X2 and X1 are considered to be inefficient, there are potential gains from trade. That means that from a contract between the two firms, the chemical discharging firm and the firm which got affected. Suppose the legal action considers a reduction of pollution to X star from X1. That means that the pollution level has been reduced. Here the reduction in the chemical firm's profit is C and the reduction in the brewery firm's cost is C plus T. Payment of the payment made by the brewery firm to the chemical firm C plus TQ 0, which is here you have to understand that Q is a number which is which lies between 0 and 1. Yeah, this is in exchange for a reduction in pollution from X1 to X star. We have seen that the level of pollution has already been reduced from X1 to X star, and it is something which would take some cost, right? This is made as a result of incurring some cost, and this would achieve an efficient allocation of resources and make both the firms better off. And the contract would generate a combined gain from trade of D. If the legal regime is considered to be restrictive, a contract in which a chemical firm would pay the brewery QA plus B in exchange for an increase in the effluent from 0 to X star, and this will lead to an efficient level of pollution and would make both the parties better off. The payment to the brewery would be something which is considered to be more than enough to compensate for the increase in the cost B, and the chemical firm's profit would increase by A plus B, which would be more than enough to cover the payment of the payment which is made to the brewery. The contract will split the gains from trade between the two firms. So this is the end result of the Coase theorem. Okay, I hope you could understand the Coase theorem better if you could go to the previous video where we have dealt with the Coase theorem as such. Actually, here in this case we have used an example to describe Coase theorem, but in that video we have it was exclusively meant for explaining Coase theorem. So I request you to go and watch that video. I'll be providing the link of the same in the description box. So what Coase Theorem exactly means is that it tells that bargaining can achieve an efficient allocation of resources, whatever the initial assignment of property rights. So what the basic thing is bargaining. If the affected parties can contract with each other, the externality could be internalized. And the party who has a legal right to control will take into consideration its effect on the other. The initial assignment of rights does not affect the distribution of income. So this is an important point that has to be kept in your mind. Under a permissive law, what happens is that an efficient bargaining would increase the polluter's profit by QD, and under a restrictive regime, an efficient bargaining would increase the profit uh, to the extent of QA. Despite private bargaining, inefficiency arising from externality persists for a variety of reasons. In a small number, you can see that there may be failure to agree on the division of the gains from a move to a more efficient allocation. In the case of a large number, the absence of contracting between the polluter and the victims may arise. And the free rider problems is likely to be important here because it will be very much difficult for the polluter to control the level of pollution of a particular, especially pollution created by a particular firm for a particular victim, and the reduction in pollution would tend to benefit all the victims who reside in the nearby area, irrespective of whether they are willing to pay or not for the reduction of pollution. So as a result, you can see that there is a kind of free rider problem existing here. In addition, the legal situation may not be well defined, so that it is not clear whether the polluter has a legal right to pollute, or the victims have some legal right to protection from this kind of pollution which affect them. Legal remedy is likely to be very costly, and also it's a matter of duration and time. So you have to wait for a long duration of time in order to in order to hear a decision regarding what is the end result of the court order. So even if the market is established, it may not be competitive. A single polluter confronting many victims may act like a monopolist with respect to changes in the level of pollution. And this is considered to be uh, a problem with respect to the existence of free rider problem in the economy. So we have to understand that there is still interest in a solution to externality problems which require public intervention. So this aspect is touched by the person who is known as Pigu by giving his contribution in the name of Pigovian taxation and subsidies. He says that if the externalities cannot be internalized by using this Coasean bargaining mechanism, it could be possible to mitigate the inefficiency through government action. As per Pigu, externality should be internalized by using some suitable taxes or subsidies policy. He has used an example by telling that the legal regime, if it is permissive, so that a polluter would choose an inefficiently high level of pollution, what you have to do is that it can impose a tax which is denoted by T per unit of output of pollution, which will give the polluter a profit function, that is Bx minus Tx, and the level of pollution chosen would satisfy B dash x minus T is equal to 0. If the Pigovian tax is imposed on the marginal damage inflicted by the polluter, then the efficient pollution level would be T is equal to D dash x star. That is, polluter would be allowed to choose the efficient amount of pollution. By making the polluter pay the marginal damage imposed by pollution tax, this would internalize the externality. Apart from the potential problems with Pigovian taxes, there are difficulties of obtaining the information which is necessary to calculate the correct rate of tax. So some people would hide some information, and also the industries and all, they are very much reluctant to pay tax. They will try all their means and ways in order to evade their tax. So as a result, it is very much likely that the people will hide information. So it's very important. It's a very difficult task to collect information, or to seek all the necessary information. So you can see that if the parties can bargain about the level of externality, a Pigovian tax may not lead to efficient situation. If you look at the figure, you would see that it shows the effect of tax to shift the polluter's marginal benefit curve down from B dash X to B dash X. minus 1, and the polluter will maximize tax after choosing extra.
So what I was trying to tell you is you have to understand this difference.
So what I've tried to tell you is you have to understand this difference. But suppose the chemical firm and the brewery can still negotiate. At extra, the brewery still suffers positive marginal damage from pollution, whereas after the tax, MB to the polluter is 0. Okay, and the bargain to reduce X to X0 could make both of them better. I mean, both the discharging firm as well as the affected firm, but better off. But government's tax revenue would be reduced by L X star minus X0, which is considered to be larger than the private gain from the bargain. The new allocation is X0, which is considered to be Pareto inefficient, and this will lead to possible increased tax revenue and make both the firms better off if X was increased from X0 to X star. If private bargaining is possible, then efficiency can be gained without Pigovian taxes. One justification for such kind of a thing is that taxes might make a tax on a pollution which could be combined with a subsidy to those who suffer from an externality to compensate for the damage caused. If such a subsidy is paid to the affected, then it may not be it may not actually provide any incentive for private bargaining between the parties. I mean the selling firm and the affected one. Now we can suppose that after the proceeds of tax revenue collected from the chemical firms, the brewery was paid a subsidy which is equal to the amount of damage it suffers from effluent, be achievement of better distribution of income only. Thus, you could say that the combination of a Pigovian tax and subsidy, this will lead to an efficiency situation, even if the parties could bargain, provided the brewery can do nothing to change the damage that it suffers. The magnitude of these kinds of effects of damage, which arises from externalities, could be influenced by the actions of both the parties, not just the party who causes the externality situation. For example, a brewery might not be able to use a different production process, which requires less water to sink or sink a well to get less polluted water. As a result, efficiency requires that both the parties mitigate the damage through a kind of Coase bargaining system. Instead, it could be shown that paying compensation to the brewery when it can influence the cost imposed on by the effluent, which leads to inefficiency kind of situation. Suppose the damage function is D XZ, where Z is the expenditure by the brewery in order to reduce the damage caused by the pollution, and STB, the compensatory subsidy given to the brewery. In this case, we could see that by paying the full compensation to the brewery will eliminate its incentive to reduce the damage it suffers. In general, if the compensation varies with the amount of damage, then this will be less than efficient level of mitigation expenditure. If there is common property, what will happen? A common property resource is an asset whose services are used in production or consumption, which is not owned by any particular individual. Examples are like ocean fisheries, grazing land, public goods, etc. For this, you have, in order to understand this, just take the example of a lake in which all the members of the community have the right to get fish from that lake. For simplicity, let's assume that the total output to catch fish depends upon the total time spent upon catching the fishes by all the individuals. Here, if you look at the figure, you can see that here there is L star, L dash, L hat, and L0 as well, which when we look into L on the x-axis, and also we could see that this figure actually shows the common ownership, which leads to inefficiency situation. The proportion of the total catch made by an individual is the proportion of total fishing effort by the labor. Alternatively, catch per unit of labor input, it is Q by L, and Li hours of labor is spent for fishing. And we can assume that variations in the total output have no effect upon the pricing of fish, and the variations in the total labor input have no effect on the wage rate. We can see that the condition each individual is trying to maximize his profit. If the marginal product declines, there would be we can see that F double dash is actually lesser than 0, and the equilibrium total labor is shown in the figure. It has got the property that reduction in the total fishing effort actually increase the total output. This occurs because the wage rate is low enough for an intersection to take place in the range of a negative marginal product. The outcome in this case will be inefficient as long as the output has a positive value and the labor devoted to fishing has got an opportunity cost. In order to generalize this result, we have to make some assumptions about this marginal social value of fish and also the marginal cost of labor involved. Just assume that these are measured by the market prices of fish and labor, and that's all for today. I hope you have got an idea about this kind of externalities, Coase theorem, etc. So thank you for watching this channel. Please like, share, and subscribe to this channel for more videos. And also, I welcome you to my Telegram group as well as Telegram channel to discuss your doubts. Thank you.